The most common objection I get when people hear I'm in commercial real estate is, yes, but you need a lot of money to buy commercial real estate. Today, I'm going to share 5 ways of acquiring commercial real estate without needing any money. Everyone knows that commercial real estate in general is quite expensive. Now, my cheapest commercial building ever was $59,000, and it's been rented, by the way, every day since I've had it. However, usually they're a lot more. So let's talk about a commercial building at, say, $1 million. Most people think they're going to need a lot of cash as a down payment in order to acquire it. Today, I'm going to explore 5 different ways that you can acquire real estate without necessarily needing any cash. And let's get straight into it. Number 1 is you have to be creative for this. But most banks, we all know this, most banks lend up to 60% of the value of a commercial building. And when I say I want to get it 100% financed, I'm not talking about getting one single mortgage for 100% of the purchase price. I'm just saying 100% of the purchase price is financed. So if we get 60% from the bank, the question becomes, where can we get the remaining 40% from? And there are a number of ways of doing that. Many investors believe they have to come up with all of the 40% themselves, but that isn't the case. There are many ways of funding the remaining amount, but today we're just going to discuss 5 of them. Number 1 is the one that most people tend to forget, and that is often you will have equity in other real estate, assuming, of course, you've got other real estate. So let's say you've got 2 other properties and the mortgage is only 50% of those. There's nothing wrong with refinancing those other 2 properties to get the 40% of the purchase price of your next property that you need to make it 100% finance. This is so logical, and yet people tend to forget it. Always look at your entire portfolio and see what you can refinance to pull money out to use as a down payment on your next deal. Number 2 is we can deploy multiple mortgages. Remember I said we want the property to be 100% financed, not necessarily to get one mortgage for 100% of the purchase price. So there's nothing to stop you going to a second bank and getting perhaps a second mortgage and even a third mortgage, which might bring you up to or close to the entire purchase price. And when I say second and third mortgage, I'm not just talking about a numerical ranking. I'm talking about legally, if ever the property gets into trouble and you fail to pay your banks, then the banks could repossess. In America, it's called a foreclosure. In many other parts of the world, it's called a mortgagee sale. And what happens is that the first ranking mortgagee or the first bank gets all of their money before the second mortgagee gets their money. And only after the second mortgagee has been paid off does the third mortgagee or third bank get its money. That is why they've got this ranking. But it does mean that you can usually get the entire purchase price by going to several banks. Now, because the second and third mortgagees have a lower ranking, the interest rate will be higher. Their risk is higher. But if this works, remember, it's just a matter of how can you take the property down. Up till now, we've been talking about the bank giving 60% of the purchase price for the first mortgage. There are circumstances under which you can get more than 60%, of course. For instance, here in the United States, the SBA offers loans at up to 95% of the appraised value or the purchase price. They do have some conditions, like for some of these loans, you have to occupy at least 51% of the building. But there are circumstances under which you can get a lot more than 60%. So what we've talked about so far is kind of a worst case scenario. But next I want to talk about a scenario where you don't need to come up with any money at all and the banks only need to give you 50% and you don't need any cash for this. What I'm talking about is finding a vacant property. Because you see, banks will generally lend 50 or 60% of the lower of the appraised value or the purchase price. Now, if you find a vacant property, usually they sell very cheaply because unlike residential real estate, where a vacant house sells for about the same price as an occupied house, with commercial real estate, the value of a commercial property is a multiple of its rental income, or technically it's the rental income divided by the cap rate or capitalization rate. So if you find a vacant building that you can buy for, say, $1 million, it's cheap because it was vacant. Now, I'm not suggesting you just go and buy vacant buildings, but if before confirming the purchase, before actually consummating the deal, if you can find a tenant at, say, $200,000 a year and cap rates at 10%, that means that building will be worth $2 million. And then you go to the bank and say, Mr. Bank Manager, I know you usually accept the lesser of the appraised value or the purchase price, and I admit I'm only paying $1 million for this building. However, between committing to buy it for $1 million and now now I've got a tenant, and even your conservative bank appraiser thinks this building is now worth $2 million. Will you please give me a 50% mortgage on it? And generally they'll say yes, because they're in the game of accepting depositors' funds at a low interest rate and lending it out to you and me to buy commercial real estate. So they say yes, you get 50% of the $2 million value, which is $1 million, which is your purchase price. And by the way, if they were to give you 60% of the new value of $2 million, you're going to get more than you need to buy it, and you'll be putting the surplus in your pocket. Now, number 4 is a variation on this. Instead of buying a building that's entirely vacant, you might buy one that is semi-vacant. And if it's already got tenants, maybe you can find a better tenant. For instance, once we had a commercial building that had a thrift store as a tenant. Nothing right or wrong, no judgment in this, but they aren't the highest end tenant that you can get. In fact, they were paying $12 a foot. And when their lease expired, we didn't renew, they didn't want to stay anyway. And we managed to get a coffee shop in there willing to pay $25 a foot. In other words, the rent on that portion of the building more than doubled, and therefore the value went up tremendously. And again, when the value goes up and the bank gives you, even if it's only 60% of the new valuation, often that's all you need to take the property down without putting any cash in yourselves. And that's why I say, as always, that your success in real estate is dependent on your own creativity. It's whatever ideas you can come up with in your mind that will propel you to new heights of real estate acquisition and ownership, which is why I always say that the most valuable real estate is the 6 inches, give or take an inch or two, between your right ear and your left ear. It's what you create in that space that ultimately will determine your net worth. The 5th idea we're going to discuss today is how you can take down properties without needing any cash yourself, is simply to find partners. You know, when you are successful at anything, you'll always find people wanting to know how you do it, and then some of those will want to participate with you. And I've got a seemingly unending stream of people coming to me saying, how do you do that? Is there any way I can participate? So let's say you found a building, you don't have any equity left in any other properties, you can't get new tenants for it, it's still a great deal, you want to buy it, but you're short $100,000 or $500,000, whatever the number is. If enough people know about it and you know them, you can't violate any financial regulations, which means you can't go to members of the public and solicit funds from them unless you've got a proper documentation in place. That documentation varies around the world. But you'll be surprised how many people say, yeah, I'd love to get involved with that. Now, you do have a partner on board. You're going to have to offer them something in return. Sometimes it might just be an interest rate. Other times it might be equity participation. But I want to ask you a question. Would you rather own, say, 60% of a building and have a partner involved who put up all the money you needed to take it down? Or would you rather own nothing of that building and not have to bother with the partner? I would rather be in partnership with 100 people and own 100 extra buildings than not be involved in any of that. And the point is, we've discussed today 5 different ways of getting the money you need to take down a commercial building. And remember, these commercial buildings are going to feed you and look after you for the rest of your life. Why would you not do that? I'm not saying that commercial real estate is the most exciting activity that you should focus on 100% of the time. But when you buy commercial real estate, it enables you to do the things you really want because you will have passive income. I discuss mortgages and funding and how you might get equity partners, amongst many other things in this book, Real Estate Riches. To get your free copy of this book, click on the link and we will send you a copy. All we charge is postage and handling. This book is full of ideas on how you can become financially free through investing in real estate. If until now you thought that in order to buy commercial real estate, you need a lot of money, I hope we've annihilated that idea from your head and given you some thoughts and ideas as to how you can acquire real estate without needing any cash. If you like what you saw, please remember to click the subscribe and like button and keep an eye out for my next video where I'll share more on how you can become financially free through investing in real estate.